Welcome to the Twice Over Movies podcast. If you're new here, check out our website at thetwiceover.com to get a better understanding of how we do our movie reviews. Our goal is to provide insight on elements of a movie which you consider more or less important, so that our scores are never misleading. Remember to follow us at the Twice Over on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and support us on Patreon.
شو اسمك؟
نوال.
نوال ايش؟
نوال مروان.
لوين رايح؟
عجلة.
شو بتسوي؟
رايحة أشوف جوزي.
فوت نوال.
Welcome, everybody, to the Twice Over Movies podcast. I'm your host, Faraz.
What's up, everyone? I'm Yousuf, your co-host, and we're here today to talk about Incendies, a French film from 2011, I believe.
French-Canadian film.
I should specify. French-Canadian, not the actual France, but nonetheless. So this is our second Denis Villeneuve film that we've reviewed, me and you, right?
This is, the first was Prisoners, and this one we're actually going to be reviewing with our semi-adjusted scoring system. Actually, nothing's really adjusted with the score itself. It's just the category names have been simplified a little bit.
Some new terminology.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Yousuf, you want to get going with the score of the movie, or do you have anything you want to add about the movie? This is the movie you wanted to review.
I did want to review. So for some context, Faraz, you've been bugging me, or you did bug me for years and years and years to watch this movie.
Not just you, man. Pretty much almost every friend I ever had.
Yeah, pretty much everyone you knew. I mean, like, honestly, I didn't even take you seriously for a long time because I the context that it came up in was just like, I think we were talking about the movie Insidious, and I was like, man, I want to see the new Insidious movie. And you were like, hey, you should watch Incendies. And like, I was like, okay, just because it's like a similar name. And so I pretty much ignored you for, 3 or 4 years. And then I eventually got around to it. And man, was I wrong. I'll just say that. I mean, I probably should have watched it a long time ago. But yeah, I mean, you were always very hot on this movie. So, I mean, you tell me what, why you're so insistent on making everyone watch this movie.
Well, let's bring in our other host. He's not here, but Fahad is the one who told me to watch this movie. Like, I just watched it and I'm like, man, this is such a great story. This is a kind of movie that it just hits you hard, and it's so different from what we were used to. I mean, this movie came out in 2010. I believe I watched it my senior year in undergrad, so like 2012. And it was a new experience for me, and I wanted other people to have that experience too.
It's a good film for someone who hasn't really seen a lot of foreign films, I think. I mean, I think recently one that's come up a lot is Parasite, right? Everyone's like, okay, that's like a good introduction to somebody who hasn't watched a lot of foreign films. But this is like a really good one too. I feel like there's a little bit of every element of movies in this, and you can enjoy it from a lot of different angles. I mean, yeah, like, for someone who doesn't have a lot of exposure or didn't at the time to foreign films, I mean, I got fully engrossed in this one. So, I mean, it's definitely a good one to kind of prime yourself for, having to read subtitles and really, enjoy a different style of movie. So, you want to get into the scores here?
Let's get into it. Let's start with the writing category. I think it's one of my, writing is my favorite category, or the most important category for me. So I'll start with that one. So I gave the writing a score of 75. It's definitely good, but the movie uses a lot of silence and it relies heavily on the acting to convey the narrative. The writing does the job, but it does not in itself stand out. How about you?
Interesting. Okay, so I gave it a 90 on some very similar terms, though. I mean, I thought that they were able to do a lot with not just dialogue, but lack of dialogue, and then the way that they use that. So I kind of gave it points for that. So it's interesting. I mean, we're scoring that category a little bit differently, but I thought there was some really good, like, one-off lines. Like, there's a lot of quotables, I feel like, in this movie. And also, there's, especially for the main character Nawal, I feel like she does a lot of acting without. I mean, she does a lot of conveying without saying much, and it has more to do with her interactions and the way that she, just the way that she holds herself up in the movie. So I mean, I kind of gave points in terms of that because it had to do with the interactions with the other characters, but yeah, it wasn't all verbal. So I think we both agree though that that's kind of where a lot of the work gets done in this movie.
That's interesting. So let's talk about acting then. As I mentioned with that writing, right? The acting is actually a significant portion of filling in for the script, just like what you just said. I totally agree. Reactions and feelings tell you just as much of the story as the writing does, and it was done like incredibly well. The actress playing Nawal, like she was incredible. But yeah, the acting is done incredibly well. Acting here is top notch. So the acting score got 90 from me.
Okay, I gave it an 85 for acting. I thought it was pretty strong overall. There's a lot of different kind of takes on the on acting in here. Like we just talked about, Nawal does a lot without saying a lot. Simone, on the other hand, the son, he's like super loud and angry. He has a lot of facial expressions and all of that, and so that's kind of a different angle. And then the daughter, Jeanne, she's kind of the opposite. You know, she's more emotional, but she's more subtle in doing it. There's kind of a lot of different ways that they go about it in this movie. But I don't know. Overall, I thought everyone kind of did a good job kind of conveying things with their acting. I mean, I don't even have any particular points that I want to get into now, but even some of the more minor characters I thought did a really good job. I mean, for a movie that I'm watching, again, you know, it's in French, so I'm losing a lot of context because I have to read all of the dialogue, but you know, a lot of that can get made up for by the acting. So I mean, I just felt like I was getting a lot of the emotion even without, you know, being a native speaker. So I think that speaks to the quality of the acting on its own.
Yeah, I mean, definitely French, but I would also just mention right now that it's also like probably a third of it is in Arabic.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, it's a mix of French and Arabic, and like, I mean, all the names, some of them are French, some of them are Arabic. So you know, it's kind of, there's a couple different languages, a couple different cultures getting mixed here. So. But yeah, like I think it's easy to lose a lot of the context because of that, especially the Arabic. I mean, it's such a different language that a lot of like the tone in their voices and things. I mean, it's
definitely,
yeah, it throws you off because, you know, I mean, there's certain characters and the way that they inflect or the way that they talk, they shout in a certain way, but it doesn't, you know, it doesn't convey the same emotions that it might in English. So you can't really rely on that to give you a sense of I don't know, the character's you know, emotional state or whatever. But as we're saying, dialogue is only one aspect of it. So I mean, the acting does a lot of work there as well. What about, let's move on to the story and sorry, the narrative. What did you have on the score there?
All right, so narrative is one of those names that we changed, right? It includes now the story, the plot, and the direction itself. So I gave this 100 because the story is just incredible. The direction here is world class. I mean, like you said, we have a lot of the story that is done in Arabic. There's a lot of the story done in French, and there's also a couple timelines that we're following. The story, I mean, it is a little complex, a little complicated, but it just engulfs you into the story in both timelines, and I think Denis Villeneuve just did an incredible job with this movie, with this story. So this story itself is based on a play, and to translate this into a movie from the play is, I think, an exceptional job. And it's one of the reasons why, like you mentioned in the beginning, I was like obsessed with this movie, telling everyone to watch it, is because this story stands out and sticks with you.
Yeah, it definitely does. I didn't know that it came from a play. But also, like, it's really interesting that, I don't know, I just thought the last movie that we reviewed from Denis Villeneuve is so different. It's like very strikingly different, I think, in terms of the story, in terms of the style, all of it. But both of them actually have very strong stories, I think. So I gave this a 95 for story. So you know, I hate being that close with all of our scores, but I'm like right there with you on that. There, you know, like you said, it is kind of like a pretty complex, convoluted story. But I think what they do well is there's kind of like a couple of scenes that they keep coming back to throughout the movie, and that kind of ties everything together. You know, so they're kind of central scenes that they flash to at intervals, and that kind of helps kind of tie the thread of the story together, I thought. And despite being that complex, I mean, it is a very, very engrossing story. I mean, so I mean, I'm glad for the complexity of it as well. The one thing that I thought was kind of odd, or I don't know how I felt about it, was you probably noticed, right? There's the movie's broken up into kind of different acts, and I'm assuming now that you've mentioned that's because of the way that probably the play is originally written. So, you know, you get kind of occasionally you get these like title headers on the screen for different sections of the movie. But I don't know, like I was kind of confused as to like where they chose to break it up. But I mean, now that I know that it's based on a play, that probably has a lot to do with how they broke it up, and it wasn't just kind of like just naturally however they felt the movie broke up. It was probably based on the play, and it may not have matched up 1-to-1. So perhaps that's why.
Yeah, because in some sections it breaks it up based on the character, as in it's like this section is about this character. So like we mentioned, Nawal, like when it goes into her story, that's the title that comes across. But then other sections are based on the setting. So like you're at this part of the like you're in this place, so that's the title of that section.
Right, like there's
it's not.
There's one of them that's titled Le Sud, which is the south, like in Lebanon.
Exactly, yeah.
And then there's also one that's named after the prison. So like yeah, I think that's probably one thing that threw me off. It was like some of them are based on the character, some of them are based on the location, but not a huge deal. It's just it was kind of confusing me as I was trying to digest everything. But I mean, whatever, I gave it a 95, so obviously it didn't bother me that much.
Yo, so this I just found this out like after watching it this second time. This, I mean, obviously it's loosely based on the Lebanese civil war in the 80s, but everything in the movie, actually, all the place names and everything is totally fictional. These are all made up cities and places and prisons and etc.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had no idea.
Interesting.
I think I thought when I first watched it that it was just straight up Lebanon, but no, I was wrong.
I mean, it's supposed to be Lebanon, though, right?
I mean, yeah, you could say it's like a mix of Lebanon, maybe even like parts of Jordan, because I don't know. I mean, I know they filmed a lot of it in Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, well, whatever, that kind of makes sense, because I was confused the whole movie, like, where are they, like, where the hell is this? And I eventually just started Googling when I was done watching the movie to try and figure out exactly where everything was set.
Yeah,
I knew it was an Arab country, but I wasn't, I didn't.
I don't recognize any of these cities. So where is this?
I mean, there are a bunch of Arab countries that have, like, a lot of French influence, so, like, I don't know, somehow it made sense in my head, but I couldn't place it, and then, whatever, that makes a lot of sense, I guess.
No, but, like, you are right. It is technically, I mean, from what it's worth, it is based on like the Lebanese civil war, because the play itself is based on a specific prisoner's story.
Okay, yeah. Interesting. So not a true story, but just loosely based, I guess?
Yeah, loosely based, not like 1-to-1.
All right, well, I'm glad for that.
Yeah.
So what do we got next?
So let's go on to the next renamed category, which used to be photography, cinematography, or sound. Now it's just aesthetics. This is your sound, your music, your photography, your cinematography. So this may seem a little harsh considering what I've given the other categories. I gave this just a score of 70. I didn't think it was all that special. I actually personally was not a fan of the insane amount of handheld shots. I thought it was a little excessive. It made it seem... It made a drama movie seem more like a war movie, and I didn't like that. Nothing stood out too much, so it got a 70.
I gave it a 75. Yeah, I don't really like war movies or political movies. I mean, they're not my favorite category, I guess, and yeah, this isn't really a war movie, but it definitely does feel like one for at least stretches of the movie. And yeah, it probably has to do with a lot with the style. I guess I think they did a good job of kind of conveying kind of the real feel of kind of the old world and all of that. I mean, it's Lebanon or wherever, but it's a country under war, and they do a really good job of conveying that. They go to the old country, they show kind of the more modern parts. I thought they did a really good job of blending like the different aspects of a country like that. There was a couple of shots that really stuck out to me, but yeah, overall, a little bit above average for me, just right around there. One thing that I really actually loved was there's a Radiohead song that they use throughout the movie. They start with it. I think they don't quite end on it, but it comes back over and over throughout the movie. It's "You and Whose Army" is the song. I don't know. I really liked that song. Like I thought
the use of it was great.
Yeah, they used it really well. I thought it fit really well with the tone of the movie. And yeah, like it's. I don't know, whatever. I liked it a lot generally as well. So, I thought they worked that in really nicely. And again, that was one of the aspects that helped kind of tie the thread of the story together. So
okay, so this leaves us with themes.
I gave it a 70. So this is my lowest score for this movie, and that's probably my favorite category generally. But I guess that just shows that like I didn't think it was that strong on the themes, yet I really liked the movie overall a lot. So there's a couple themes that come back throughout the movie, but there's not like a whole lot going on that front, I guess. Most of it kind of has to do with you're talking about kind of the horrors of war and all that entails on a more personal level, not so much the global level. So I thought they did a good job of conveying that throughout the movie. But generally kind of light on that category. So what about you?
Okay, it's actually interesting. So overall for themes, I managed a score of 60 for this.
Okay.
So this is a heavy movie, right? And we know it from like the first scene that this is going to be a heavy movie. And it's just in your face with some very brutal scenes. It's not really subtle. And honestly, I'm not sure how well defined like the themes were. Like you said, it's a little broad, and it's just mainly like, showing you the traumas of war and the tragedy of it, which is, I mean, it's a theme, it's a good theme, and a worthy theme to make a movie off of. But it's just a little broad. And I didn't think it's not something that stuck out to me throughout the movie. It was just there, and it was not like anything new or changing my perspective in any way. So 60.
I feel you there. Like, maybe we could talk about this for a second, like in terms of just exactly what comprises a theme. Like you said, a lot of the themes, or what you can call themes in this movie, are pretty broad here. Somehow in my head, if I can define a theme by like one or two words, like, or a short phrase, then that feels more like a theme to me. But if I have to give you kind of a huge prose to explain to you what the theme was, then it's not really a theme. It's kind of more just a plot device at that point, I feel like. So I don't know, somehow I draw the line in my head somewhere there, and that's exactly what happened here. There's a few concepts that I think they come back to over and over. So kind of like a theme, but I don't know, like it's a little bit less defined than I would ideally like. And so that's kind of why I knocked it down here. So in terms of a theme, like, I don't know, what do you think? I just want to hear your take on it. Like what do you look for to say like, okay, that's a theme versus, oh, that's just like a part of the story. You know what I mean?
So a theme for me is like, at least when we're talking about film, I'm talking about like legitimately what the underlying message is meant to be, and like what we're supposed to get out of the movie as far as a message goes. So it is something like a persuasion of sorts for the audience. Like, how are you trying to persuade them one way or another? So like everyone I would hope is coming in with the idea like war kind of sucks. It's a horrible thing. It is traumatic events for anyone who's ever involved in it. So like it didn't explore those themes beyond just like, broadly already knowing that it's like that. And I don't think it needed to. I'm not saying that this movie like had to have done that. I mean, you only have so much time to get into everything, and like we mentioned with the story and the narrative, like it has a lot to get through just with that. So it doesn't have to like, kill it in every single category. It would be very difficult to do that. So for themes, it's there, but it's not like a center point for the movie. So that's why I got, like, I guess from both of us, got a semi-mediocre score.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I guess so. I mean, to me, a theme doesn't necessarily have to be kind of a takeaway message. I mean, that's obviously one way to do it, but we'll talk about it more as we get into this, because I don't want to talk about the specific themes that I kind of saw here. But I mean, there's a couple of things. I don't want to keep using the word thread. I just talked about like the thread of the story for like an hour, but like there's certain ideas or basic concepts that can come up again and again in a movie, and that creates kind of like a common thread, even for totally unrelated events. And so sometimes that can be the way that it manifests, and I did see that here. But yeah, again, like it's just nothing as strong or as cohesive as I see in some other movies that I really love. So I mean, that's fair enough. We'll get into it more as we go on, but that's kind of something interesting. I think we all interpret that a little bit differently. So
okay, so let's make this a spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert!
Definitely go watch this movie.
Go watch this movie. Turn off your podcast.
It would kind of ruin the movie if you kept listening.
This is not one you just want to find out about. I would definitely recommend going and watching this, and especially if you think you hate foreign films, go watch this one.
Thanks for listening to this production of The Twice Over. If you haven't already, subscribe and follow wherever you get your podcast, and remember to support us on Patreon or by sharing the podcast with a friend. Feel free to contact us on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook at The Twice Over, or email us at comments@thetwiceover.com. All of the music you heard is from Amerigo Gazaway. Check him out on Bandcamp and Spotify.